I'm Whitney, 29 years old, and last April my mother tried to sell my wedding day to my cousin, without bothering to ask me first. Picture this: 47 missed calls lighting up a phone screen at 3 in the morning, a 14-page spreadsheet totaling $83,247, and me, standing barefoot on a beach in the Maldives in a white chiffon dress, salt air in my hair, my husband's hand in mine, while 200 guests back in Portland, Oregon, stared at an empty ballroom and wondered where the bride had gone. That all happened between March and June of last year, and I promise you, every dollar and every detail matters. Before I walk you through it, if this story hits home for you, take a second to hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'd love to know. Now, let me take you back to March, the day I first realized my family had never actually seen me. My name is Whitney Collier, and for 7 years I was the most reliable piece of financial infrastructure my family ever owned. I need to give you the picture. My mother, Diane Collier, 56, worked as an administrative manager at a public high school in Portland. Solid job, about $54,000 a year. Her older sister, my Aunt Lorraine Holloway, 61, had always been the matriarch of the extended family. Whatever Lorraine decided, Diane followed, and whatever Diane needed, she came to me. It started small. In 2017, the year I landed my first real position as a financial analyst at Hargrove and Ellis Consulting, Mom called about a leaky roof, $400. Then it was $600 for an insurance gap, then $8,500 for a down payment on my cousin Megan's car. She needs it for work, Whitney, you know how it is. Then $12,000 to remodel Mom's basement, then $7,200 for my younger brother Tyler's certification program. He was 20 at the time, and Mom swore the community college wouldn't hold his spot without a deposit by Friday. Every single time I hesitated, the playbook ran like clockwork. Phase 1. Tears. You're the oldest, I have no one else to lean on. Phase 2. The cold shoulder. Radio silence for days, sometimes a full week. Phase 3. The conference call. Lorraine would dial in with that low, disappointed voice. Whitney, sweetheart, your mother is heartbroken. Is money really more important than family? 3 phases, 100% success rate, 7 years running. Somewhere around January 2019, I started logging every transfer, every Venmo, every check in a private Excel spreadsheet. Habit of the job, I told myself. I'm an analyst. I track numbers. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even a plan. It was the only place where the truth existed exactly as it happened, down to the penny. I had no idea that spreadsheet would eventually blow my family apart. If I was the family's silent ATM, my cousin Megan Holloway was its golden trophy. Megan was 28, a year younger than me, Aunt Lorraine's only daughter. She worked freelance marketing gigs. Income unpredictable, maybe $35,000 a year on a good year. But you'd never guess that from her Instagram. 12,000 followers, curated brunches, boutique hotel lobbies, outfit of the day posts with captions like, "Living my best life." She looked like a woman pulling in 6 figures, and our family treated her like one. At every holiday dinner, every birthday gathering, Megan was the sun. Mom would nudge me under the table. See how Megan works a room? You should try that sometime. Aunt Lorraine once said, in front of 8 relatives, Megan has real style. Not everyone does, and that's fine. She looked directly at me when she said, not everyone. Here's the moment that branded itself into my memory. Thanksgiving 2023. I paid for the entire event, venue rental, catering, decorations, $3,200. When Aunt Lorraine stood to give thanks, she smiled at my mother and said, Diane, thank you for putting this beautiful evening together. Not a glance my way, not a syllable of my name. I sat there holding my fork and smiled because that was what I'd been trained to do, Nathan noticed. We'd been dating about a year by then, and on the drive home he turned the radio down and said quietly, Did you catch that? Nobody said thank you to you. I had caught it. I'd been catching it for years. I just hadn't admitted what it meant. There's one more thing about Megan you need to know, and I wouldn't learn this detail until later that winter. She was carrying $31,000 in credit card debt. Keep that number in your pocket. It'll explain everything that comes next. In October 2024, Nathan Brennan asked me to marry him. He did it at Pittock Mansion, that gorgeous overlook above Portland where you can see the city, the river, Mount Hood if the sky's clear. He'd packed a thermos of my favorite Earl Grey, and when he knelt on the damp stone, he didn't give a speech. He just said, "Whitney, you're the first person who doesn't need a reason to be loved. Will you let me prove that every day?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. Nathan was 31, a software engineer at a fintech company downtown, pulling in about $118,000 a year. Steady, practical, protective without being pushy. He was the first person from outside the Collier orbit, and because of that, he could see the pattern I'd been too deep inside to recognize. We chose Ridgewood Estate, an elegant venue just outside Portland, capacity 200, ivy-covered stone walls, exactly the kind of place I'd scrolled past for years thinking, that's for other people. The full package came to $28,000. We signed the contract in November 2024, put down a 50% deposit of $14,000, and the coordinator, Jill Pemberton, meticulous, mid-40s, the kind of woman who triple-checks seating charts, walked us through every clause. I remember her tapping Section 7.2 with her pen. If you cancel at least 8 weeks before the event date, we refund 80% of the deposit. I nodded politely. Why would I ever need that? This venue was the first significant amount of money I had ever spent on myself without asking anyone's permission. When I told Mom, she said, "Oh, congrats." Aunt Lorraine's first question was, "How many people does it hold?" Megan commented on my Instagram announcement. One word, cute. One word, after everything I'd paid for. One word. March 12th changed everything. Nathan and I had set up a shared email for wedding planning, one inbox for vendor quotes, RSVPs, fabric swatches, all of it. That Wednesday evening, Nathan was scrolling through confirmations from the florist when he stopped mid-scroll and said, "Whitney, come look at this." It was a forwarded message from Jill Pemberton. Her tone was polite but careful. "Hi, Whitney. I received an email from someone claiming to represent your family, requesting a second reception be added to your date. I wanted to confirm with you before making any changes. Please see the forwarded message below." Below Jill's note was the original email, from my mother. "Dear Jill, I'm Diane Collier, Whitney's mother and family representative. We'd like to add a second celebration for my niece Megan Holloway on the same date, sharing the ballroom and splitting costs. Whitney has agreed to this arrangement. Please send us a revised quote. Thank you." I read it 3 times. My vision tunneled. Whitney has agreed to this arrangement. I had agreed to nothing. Nobody had called me, texted me, or even hinted at this. My hands were shaking when I dialed Mom. She picked up on the second ring, breezy, like nothing in the world was wrong. "Oh, sweetie, I was going to tell you. Aunt Lorraine mentioned Megan just got engaged too, and the venue is so gorgeous, so we thought, why not share? You split $28,000, you only pay $14,000. It's a win for everyone. Don't be selfish about it." Don't be selfish. The woman who had taken $83,000 from me over 7 years was telling me not to be selfish about my own wedding. I managed 4 words before I hung up. "I never agreed, Mom." She called back twice. I didn't answer. That night I sat alone at the kitchen table, laptop open, the apartment dark except for the blue glow of the screen. Nathan had gone to bed after squeezing my shoulder and saying, "Take the time you need." I opened the spreadsheet. I'd been updating it for 6 years. Columns for date, amount, purpose, who asked, how they asked, and a notes field where I sometimes pasted screenshots of the text messages that preceded each transfer. It had started as basic bookkeeping. Now, scrolling from the first entry in January 2017 to the last one in February 2025, it read like something else entirely. I began tallying, not the way I usually did, skimming for monthly totals. This time I pulled every line into a summary sheet and let the formula run. Basement remodel for Mom, $12,000. Megan's car deposit, $8,500. Tyler's certification tuition, $7,200. Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings, 7 years running, averaging roughly $3,500 each year, $24,500. Grandpa's funeral expenses that nobody else offered to cover, $6,800. Aunt Lorraine's 60th birthday party, $4,200. And then the long tail of emergencies. A broken furnace, a parking ticket, a bridesmaid dress for Megan's friend's wedding that somehow became my bill, a dental crown for Mom, deposits and late fees and grocery runs and on, $20,047. The cell at the bottom turned bold, $83,247. I stared at it. Then I opened a second column. Amount family has spent on Whitney. And typed a 0. My birthday last year. No one called. No card. No text. No dinner. Mom forgot. I heard Nathan's footsteps behind me. He sat down, looked at the screen, and didn't say anything for a long time. Then quietly, "What do you want to do?" I didn't answer him. Not yet. The next morning, March 13th, I called Rosa Delgado. Rosa and I went back to undergrad. She was 33 now, a family law attorney with a small firm in Southeast Portland, the kind of friend who would pick up on the first ring at 7 a.m. and not ask why. I told her everything, the venue, the email, the 7 years, the number. She was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then she said, "Whitney, your mother impersonated your consent in writing to a third-party vendor. If Jill had acted on that email, you could have been on the hook for contract modifications you never authorized. That's not a family disagreement. That's misrepresentation of consent." The word misrepresentation landed in my chest like a brick. I'd spent my whole life calling it helping out. Rosa was calling it what it was. "Save everything," she said. "The forwarded email, the original, Jill's message. Screenshot your call log with your mother. And Whitney, whatever you decide for you, not for Diane." I hung up and made 3 calls in 40 minutes. First, Jill Pemberton. I confirmed the contract was untouched. Diane's email had triggered no changes because Jill, bless her professional instincts, had checked with me first. Then I told Jill I needed to invoke Section 7.2, cancellation before 8 weeks. The wedding date was June 14th. We were 13 weeks out, well within the window. Jill processed the request that afternoon. 80% of $14,000, $11,200 back in our account within 10 business days. Second, a resort in the Maldives I'd bookmarked months ago on a daydream scroll. Seaside Haven. 2-person beach ceremony package. Photographer, private villa. 3 nights. Total, $9,800. Third, Nathan. He answered, and before I could explain, he said, "Tell me when we leave." We booked flights for June 12th, Portland to Dubai to Malay. I told no one. 5 days later, on March 18th, I learned just how far ahead of me they'd been. A college friend tagged me in an Instagram story with a heart eyes emoji and the words "OMG double wedding?" I tapped through, confused, and there it was, Megan's story. A photo of a cream-colored invitation with gold foil lettering. Whitney and Nathan/Megan and Derek. June 14th, Ridgewood Estate. A double celebration of love. Megan's caption, 2 brides, 1 magical night. I zoomed in. The fonts were elegant. The layout was professional. These weren't mock-ups. These were printed invitations, the kind you order in bulk. And according to the comments rolling in under Megan's grid post, 150 of them had already been mailed. To friends, to extended family, to my co-workers at Hargrove and Ellis, to my boss. 150 people now believed I was happily sharing my wedding day with my cousin. 150 people had held that card in their hands and thought, "How nice, a double celebration." I called Nathan at his desk. He listened, then said, measured and calm, "They printed invitations before you said yes. That tells you everything you need to know about how they see you." He was right. In their version of reality, my agreement wasn't something they needed to obtain. It was something they assumed they already owned. I checked my records. The Ridgewood contract had been canceled on March 14th. Jill had sent a cancellation confirmation on the 15th to the email on file. Mine. The venue was gone. The catering tied to our booking was gone. But my family had no idea. They were building a party on a foundation that no longer existed. Rosa's advice echoed, "Not yet, Maldives first, truth after," so I kept my mouth shut. And the clock kept ticking. March 22nd. The dress fitting. Mom had arranged it, her word, not mine, at a bridal boutique on Southwest Broadway, the kind of place with champagne flutes by the door and mirrors that run floor to ceiling. When I walked in, they were already there. Mom, Aunt Lorraine, Megan, and two other aunts whose names you don't need to remember. Everyone was smiling. Everyone had an opinion. Megan went first. 4 dresses. Each one drew gasps, applause, phone cameras raised like she was walking a runway. Gorgeous, Aunt Lorraine said, dabbing her eye. Absolutely breathtaking. Megan spun in front of the mirror, and the room orbited her the way it always had. When my turn came, Mom said, "Just pick something simple, honey. You're not the flashy type anyway." I stepped onto the platform in a white A-line. Classic clean, nothing wrong with it. The room was quiet. Nobody raised a phone. Lorraine examined her manicure. Megan glanced up from her own reflection and said, in a voice you'd use to compliment a child's finger painting, "Oh, want me to take a pic for you, Whitney?" I smiled and said, "Sure." One photo, taken from a low angle that caught the fluorescent light and half of Lorraine's shoulder. That was my fitting. In the restroom afterward, I locked the stall, sat on the closed lid, and texted Nathan, "I'm fine. 83 days. I'll wear this dress on a beach, not here." He sent back one line, "Then that dress is going to have the best day of its life." I washed my face, walked back out, and hugged my mother goodbye. It was the most deliberate performance I had ever given, and for the first time, keeping a secret from my family didn't feel like guilt. It felt like freedom. 3 days later, my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect. Grandma Eleanor. Eleanor Collier was 84, sharp as a tax audit, and living at Maple Grove Senior Residence in Salem, about an hour south of Portland. She was Mom's and Lorraine's mother, the woman who'd raised them both, and she almost never called. When she did, it meant something. "Whitney, sweetheart," she said. Her voice was thin but steady, the way old oak sounds when wind passes through it. "I got a pretty invitation in the mail, your name and Megan's name, both on there. I just want to ask you one question." "Okay, Grandma. Are you happy about it?" I pressed the phone hard against my ear. In 29 years, through every holiday dinner and every silent bank transfer, and every time I smiled when I wanted to scream, nobody in my family had ever asked me that. Not once. Not my mother, not Lorraine, not Megan, not Tyler. Nobody. Grandma Eleanor was the first. I couldn't answer right away because my throat had closed. 8 seconds of silence that she didn't try to fill. "Grandma," I finally said, "nobody asked me that. You're the first person." She let out a long breath. "I know my girls, Whitney. Diane and Lorraine, they're built like me in the worst ways. Always worried about what people see. But a wedding is yours, honey. It's not a stage for somebody else's show." I didn't tell her about the Maldives. I didn't tell her the venue was already canceled. I just said, "I'll be okay, Grandma. I promise." "I believe you," she said. And she meant it. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since the night I'd tallied the spreadsheet. Not from anger, from the simple, devastating relief of being seen by someone who actually cared whether I was happy. The last week of March, the pressure came from every direction at once. Mom called daily. Every conversation ended the same way, a hook pulled from the same guilt trip playbook I'd memorized by heart. "If you back out of the double wedding, you're telling me you don't respect this family. Aunt Lorraine says if you don't cooperate, she won't come, and Grandma won't come either." She wielded Grandma Eleanor's name like a hostage negotiator, and it made my stomach turn because I'd just heard Grandma's actual voice, asking the only question that mattered. Lorraine's attack came in writing. An email, subject line, family unity. 3 paragraphs of polished condescension. "In this family we share. If you choose to be selfish, you will isolate yourself. Your grandmother is 84 years old. She wants to see her family together. Are you really going to deny her that?" And then Megan sliding into my DMs with a message so perfectly passive-aggressive it could have been framed. "Hey, Whit just wanted to say I'm so excited about our double wedding. Derek and I are planning the sweetest surprise for you at the reception. Don't worry, I'll handle the decor half. You know I have better taste anyway. I screenshotted everything. Lorraine's email, Megan's message, my phone's call log showing 19 incoming calls from Mom in 7 days. I dragged every file into a folder on my desktop labeled 2025, March. Rosa had told me to save it all, and I did. When Mom called again that Sunday night, I kept my voice even. I understand, Mom. I'll think about it. What I was really thinking about was a boarding pass dated June 12th and a beach ceremony 9,000 miles away. But she didn't need to know that. Not yet. April 5th, a Saturday. Dinner at Aunt Lorraine's house. 12 people around a long dining table. Lorraine at the head, naturally. Mom to her right. Megan and her fiancé Derek Voss across from me. Derek was 30, a real estate agent. Decent enough guy who always looked slightly uncomfortable at family events, like he'd wandered into someone else's reunion. Then there were 2 other aunts, an uncle, a few cousins, and Nathan beside me, his hand resting on my knee under the table. Lorraine clinked her glass before the salad course. I'd like to raise a toast to our 2 brides. The room applauded. Megan beamed. I smiled and lifted my water. Mom leaned across the table. Whitney, do you want to say something? 12 pairs of eyes turned to me. I let one beat pass. Then, I'm just really grateful to everyone here. True, diplomatic, committed to nothing. Megan wasn't done. She pulled out her iPad and propped it against the centerpiece. I put together a mood board. Tell me what you guys think. She swiped through. White roses with gold accents, a massive floral arch, a custom photo booth, and there, centered on every frame, Megan and Derek in elegant script. Nathan's and my names appeared once, in the bottom right corner of a seating chart mock-up, 2 font sizes smaller. Nobody mentioned the difference. Maybe nobody noticed. Nathan noticed. I felt his knee press against mine once, firmly. On the drive home, he was quiet until we hit the freeway. Then he said, "Your name was 3 font sizes smaller than Megan's." I know. So you know you're making the right call. I stared out the windshield at the rain and didn't answer because I didn't need to. 2 months and 9 days. That was all I had to survive. April and May disappeared in a double life I never imagined I'd be living. On the surface, I attended 2 more family planning calls, nodded through a group text about table linens, and even approved a sample menu that Megan forwarded with a smiley face. Every interaction was theater, and I played my part with the calm precision of someone defusing a bomb by pretending it's a birthday present. Behind the curtain, Nathan and I built the real wedding piece by piece. Our flights were locked. Portland to Dubai, Dubai to Malé, June 12th. Seaside Haven Resort confirmed the 2-person ceremony package. Beachfront at sunset, a local officiant, a photographer named Amir, who sent sample galleries that made my chest ache with how simple and beautiful it all looked. $9,800 total for 3 nights in an overwater villa, the ceremony, and a private dinner on the sand afterward. The refund from Ridgewood Estate, $11,200, had landed in our joint account on March 28th, exactly on schedule. Jill Pemberton's confirmation email sat in a folder I checked twice a week just to make sure it was still real. I quietly messaged about 15 close friends, not family, and told them the wedding plans had shifted and I'd share details soon. No one pushed. Real friends don't. I ordered a second wedding dress online, not the A-line from the boutique. That one was too tangled with Lorraine's smirk and Megan's condescending offer to take a photo. This one was chiffon, floor length, $380, designed for bare feet and warm wind. And then there was the spreadsheet. Rosa reviewed every page, cross-referencing bank statements I'd pulled. 14 pages. Airtight. She converted it to PDF and said, "You don't have to send this to anyone, but if you ever choose to, it's ready." If. That word carried a lot of weight. June 14th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Ridgewood Estate, Portland, Oregon. I wasn't there. But I can tell you exactly what happened, because Nathan's friend Marcus was on the guest list. He'd received one of the 150 invitations, and he sat in his car across the parking lot and told us everything later, down to the minute. Guests began arriving at 3:45. Women in pastels, men in summer suits, the lawn freshly mowed, the Oregon sun actually cooperating for once. Aunt Lorraine swept in wearing a teal mother of the bride ensemble like she owned the property. Mom wore lavender. Megan was somewhere inside, reportedly in a $4,200 dress that Lorraine had quietly put on a credit card. By 4:15, people started checking their phones. The ballroom doors were closed. No coordinator at the entrance. No welcome table. By 4:20, Mom called me. Voicemail. She called again. Nathan's phone? Voicemail. 3 more attempts in 10 minutes. At 4:45, Jill Pemberton walked out to the garden where guests were milling in confusion. She approached my mother directly and spoke in the measured tone of someone who had rehearsed professionalism for decades. Mrs. Collier, I need to inform you that the contract with Whitney Collier and Nathan Brennan was canceled on March 14th, per clause 7.2. We have no active booking under their names. The venue has been rebooked for a corporate event beginning at 7 p.m. Mom's face went white. Canceled? I didn't know about any cancellation. A confirmation was emailed to the address on file on March 15th, Jill said. You may want to check your spam folder. By 5 o'clock, 200 guests stood on a manicured lawn with no ceremony, no catering, no music, and no bride. Megan was inside in her dress, mascara streaking, Derek rubbing his forehead beside her. And the venue had given them 90 minutes to leave. Here's what I need you to understand about time zones. The Maldives is 9 hours ahead of Portland. So while 200 guests were pulling into the Ridgewood parking lot at 4 p.m. Pacific, it was already 1 in the morning on June 15th where I was, and our wedding had happened 11 hours earlier. Let me take you there. 5:30 p.m. Maldives time, June 14th. The sun was low and copper-colored, throwing light across water so blue it didn't look real. I stood barefoot on white sand in the chiffon dress, the $380 one, and my toes sank with each small shift of weight. Nathan faced me in a white linen shirt and khaki pants, sleeves rolled to the elbow, no tie, no pretense. There were exactly 4 people present. Us, the officiant, a soft-spoken Maldivian man named Ismail who'd performed over 300 beach ceremonies, and the photographer Amir, crouching low to catch the light. Nathan's vows were short, and they wrecked me. You are not anyone's ATM. You don't need permission to be happy. From today, I'm your family, and our family will never run on guilt. Mine were shorter. I spent my whole life waiting for someone to ask what I wanted instead of telling me what I owed. You were the first person who asked. You're my home. After the ceremony, we ate dinner on the sand, grilled fish, coconut rice, a bottle of sparkling water, because neither of us needed champagne to feel drunk on what we'd done. At 7 p.m. Maldives time, 10 a.m., in Portland. I posted one photo to Facebook and Instagram. 2 people on a beach, golden light, no shoes. The caption, June 14th, 2025, just us. Just enough. No tags, no explanation. 6 hours before the chaos at Ridgewood even began. Now, before I continue, if you've made it this far and you're feeling any of this in your chest, I want you to know you're not alone. Thousands of people have sat where I sat, tallying up what they've given versus what they've received, wondering if they're allowed to say enough. If this story is speaking to you, do me a favor. Drop a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Because what happened next? It made everything before look like the opening act. All right. Back to June 14th, 9 p.m. Maldives time. I'd turned my phone off for the ceremony and kept it off through dinner. Nathan and I sat on the villa deck watching the dark ocean breathe, and for 3 perfect hours the world was exactly as small as we needed it to be. At 9 p.m., Maldives time, noon in Portland, I powered the phone back on. It took 45 seconds for the notifications to finish loading. 47 missed calls, 19 from Mom, 11 from Aunt Lorraine, 8 from Megan, 5 from Tyler, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, 2 from Aunt Linda, 93 text messages. Mom's thread alone was a timeline of disintegration. The early ones, sent around 3 p.m. Portland time, were confused. Where are you? Everyone's waiting. By 4:30, they'd turned desperate. Whitney Collier, call me back right now. By 5, after Jill's announcement, They went nuclear. You canceled the venue? Have you lost your mind? And then the final message, sent at 5:47 p.m. 8 words that I read twice and will remember forever. You are no longer my daughter. We're done. Lorraine's thread was shorter and colder. You have destroyed Megan's most important day. There will be consequences. Megan, how could you do this to me? I'm standing in my wedding dress in an empty room. You ruined my life. Nathan read them over my shoulder. His jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. You don't have to answer tonight. Morning. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. The screen glowed through the wood for a few seconds, then went dark. I looked out at the ocean, and I want to be honest with you. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel triumphant either. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. Light. Like something enormous had been lifted off my back. The phone rang at 3:12 a.m. I'd been drifting in and out of sleep, the kind of half-consciousness where your body rests, but your mind replays the day on a loop. Nathan was out cold beside me, breathing slow and even. The screen lit up with Mom, and I watched it pulse 4 times before I picked up. She didn't start with hello. Do you have any idea what I went through today? 200 people, Whitney. 200 people staring at me like I'm a fraud. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Her voice was raw, ragged, the sound of a woman who'd been yelling for hours and was now running on fumes. I sat up in bed. I could hear the ocean outside the villa. Mom, I never agreed to share the venue. Oh, don't start. You sent an email to our coordinator pretending I'd given consent. You printed 150 invitations with my name on them without calling me once. You turned my wedding into Megan's stage. That's because you're selfish. Family shares. You make good money. What does it cost you to help? You want to know what it's cost me, Mom? $83,247. That's what I've given this family in 7 years. Would you like me to go line by line? Silence. 8 full seconds. I counted. Don't you dare throw money in my face, she said, but the volume had dropped. She wasn't yelling anymore. I'm not throwing anything. I'm reading a spreadsheet I've kept since 2019. Every dollar, every transfer, every text message where you asked. She hung up. I set the phone down, pressed my palms against my eyes, and breathed. Nathan's hand found mine in the dark. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. I had said the number out loud for the first time, and she had no answer for it. The next morning, June 15th, 5 p.m. Maldives time, 8 a.m. In Portland, I opened my laptop on the villa desk, the Indian Ocean flat and turquoise behind the screen, and navigated to the Collier family group chat on Facebook Messenger. 24 members, every aunt, uncle, and cousin old enough to have an account. I typed slowly, editing twice before I hit send. I know everyone is angry. I understand. But before anyone judges what I did, I'm asking you to read the attached file. It's a record of every dollar I've spent on this family from 2017 to 2025. Every transfer, every receipt, every screenshot of a text asking for money. The total is $83,247. The amount this family has spent on me in the same period, $0. I'm not sending this to hurt anyone. I'm sending it because the truth deserves to exist somewhere other than my private hard drive. I attached the PDF. 14 pages. Rosa had reviewed it line by line against my bank statements before I left Portland. Page 1 was the summary, year-by-year totals, and a grand total in bold. Pages 2 through 13 broke it down. Date, amount, purpose, who requested it, and a thumbnail of the evidence, a bank transfer confirmation, a Venmo screenshot, a text message. Page 14 was a single table with 3 rows. Money. Whitney spent on family, $83,247. Money family spent on Whitney, $0. Number of times family said thank you, 0. I pressed send and closed the laptop. For 4 hours, nobody responded. I watched the read receipts tick upward. 5, 9, 14, 21. But the chat stayed silent. 21 people reading, not a single word typed. At noon Portland time, Aunt Linda broke the silence. Oh my God, I had no idea. 12:15. Uncle Greg. Whitney, I'm sorry, this is not okay. 12:30. Mom. You're airing family business in front of everyone. I will never forgive you for this. 12:32. Lorraine. Disgusting. You reduced everything to dollars and cents. But the rest of the chat stayed quiet. And in that silence, I heard something I'd never heard before from my family. The sound of people who couldn't argue with the math. The numbers started moving within 24 hours, and I tracked them the way I track everything, carefully. By the evening of June 16th, 8 of the 24 members had left the family group chat. Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg were among the first. 3 cousins I barely spoke to followed, then 2 of Lorraine's bridge friends who'd been added years ago and probably wanted no part of the fallout. The chat that once pinged with holiday planning and birthday reminders was hemorrhaging members like a lifeboat with too many holes. Megan scrubbed her Instagram. The double wedding story vanished. The grid post with the gold foil invitation, gone. But the internet has a longer memory than Megan planned for. Screenshots had already been shared in comment threads. Her follower count dropped from 12,000 to 11,400 in 48 hours. People were asking questions she couldn't answer. Then came the call I didn't expect. Nathan's phone buzzed on the second night. Derek Voss. Man, Derek said, and I could hear it in his voice. The queasy realization of someone discovering the ground beneath him isn't solid. I didn't know the full picture. Megan told me Whitney was totally on board with everything. I feel sick. Nathan kept it clean. I appreciate you reaching out, Derek. This isn't about you. Meanwhile, Mom posted a public status on Facebook. When your own child turns their back on family, you learn who really loves you. It collected 14 likes, 3 sympathetic comments. But 7 people asked what happened, and when someone, I still don't know who, shared the spreadsheet PDF in the thread, 4 of the 14 likes quietly disappeared. And then Tyler texted me. My little brother, 22 years old, a kid I'd paid $7,200 to put through a certification program. His message was 1 paragraph long, and it cracked something open in my chest. I didn't know it was this bad, sis. I'm sorry I never said anything. I wrote back. You don't owe me an apology. Just remember, don't let anyone do to you what they did to me. By June 17th, Megan tried the only playbook she knew, the victim narrative. She posted an Instagram story, long, text-heavy, no filter for once, that opened with, I've been going through something really hard and I just need grace right now. She talked about feeling blindsided and heartbroken without mentioning the forged email, the uninvited invitations, or the $31,000 in credit card debt that had made piggybacking on my venue so appealing in the first place. It might have worked if the spreadsheet hadn't already been circulating. Mutual friends, people who'd known both of us since college, left comments that were polite but pointed. Didn't you know the venue was booked under Whitney's name? And, the spreadsheet is all over the family group chat, Meg. Megan deleted the comments, but screenshots traveled faster than her thumbs. The real aftershock, though, was Derek. He didn't break up with her. But on June 21st, he told Megan the wedding was on hold, indefinitely. His reason, relayed to Nathan in a brief phone call. If your family lied to Whitney and let me believe she was fine with everything, what else don't I know? I need to understand what actually happened before I stand at an altar. They weren't over. But the trust was fractured, and Derek insisted on couples therapy before any new date would be set. Aunt Lorraine, predictably, blamed me. She called Aunt Linda and declared that I had sabotaged Megan's happiness. But Linda, quiet, overlooked Linda, sent Lorraine a private message that Whitney would only learn about weeks later. Lorraine, I read the spreadsheet. Whitney paid $4,200 for your 60th birthday party. Did you know that? Lorraine never responded. And Megan went silent on social media for 2 straight weeks, the first digital blackout in 5 years. For someone who'd built her identity on being seen, the silence said everything. The fallout for Mom was slower, quieter, and more devastating than anything that happened online. Within the week following June 14th, the story spread through the extended Collier Holloway network, roughly 40 people across 3 generations. The spreadsheet PDF was forwarded at least 5 times that I could track, though probably more. And the question everyone was asking wasn't, why did Whitney run? It was, did Diane really take $83,000 from her own daughter? The answer was 14 pages long, and nobody could dispute it. The first domino fell at Maple Grove. Grandma Eleanor called Mom. I wasn't on the line, but Tyler told me afterward, word for word, because he'd been in the kitchen when Mom took the call on speaker by accident. "Diane," Grandma said, "I raised you better than this. You used your daughter like a cash machine for 7 years. $83,000. I am ashamed." Mom cried. She cried for a long time. But she didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. The numbers were the numbers. The second domino fell at St. Andrew's, the church the Collier family attended every Sunday. People talked. Of course they talked. After 2 Sundays of being approached with careful questions and poorly hidden pity, Mom stopped lingering after service and started leaving through the side door. Then the third, and maybe the cruelest, Aunt Linda quietly volunteered to host Thanksgiving that year. "I think it's better if I handle it this time," she said, so gently it almost sounded like kindness. But everyone understood what it meant. For 20 years, Diane Collier had organized the family Thanksgiving. It was her one piece of visible authority, her proof that she mattered, and just like that, it was gone. Mom didn't call me for 3 weeks, the longest silence of my life. And the first one that didn't feel like punishment. It felt like breathing room. June 20th, Portland International Airport. Gate C12. Nathan and I walked off the jetway with tans we hadn't earned and a marriage license from a country most of my family couldn't find on a map. Our carry-ons were light. Everything else, the notifications, the voicemails, the wreckage, was heavy enough. The apartment smelled like stale coffee and the basil plant Nathan had forgotten to water. I set my bag down, opened the laptop, and the screen lit up like a switchboard. 214 Facebook notifications, 38 emails, 12 voicemails. The digital debris of a family implosion. I didn't open everything. Rosa had coached me before I left. When you get back, triage. Only read what moves you forward. Everything else is noise. So I filtered. Rosa's messages, read. Tyler's, read. Grandma Eleanor's voicemail. 7 seconds, just her voice saying, "Welcome home, sweetheart." Jill Pemberton's final confirmation that the refund had been processed and the file was closed. Those 4. Everything else, I left blue and unread. Nathan heated leftover soup, the kind that comes from a can, nothing fancy. And we sat at the kitchen table where, 3 months earlier, I'd stared at a spreadsheet and felt the floor shift under my life. "So," he said, stirring his bowl, "we need to figure out who gets to be in our life, and on what terms." I pulled a legal pad from the drawer, the yellow kind, lined, the most unglamorous tool in the world, and wrote 2 words at the top, my boundaries, not a declaration of war, not a revenge plan, just a list. A line drawn in ink by a woman who'd spent 29 years not knowing she was allowed to hold a pen. The question now was who would respect that line, and who wouldn't. Tyler's message arrived on June 22nd, 2 days after we got home. It wasn't a text. It was a full email, which for a 22-year-old felt almost ceremonial. "Whitney, I read the spreadsheet, all 14 pages. I saw the line, $7,200, Tyler's certification program. I didn't know that money came from you. Mom told me it was from her savings. She looked me in the eye and said she'd been putting it aside for years. I believed her. I'm not going to pretend I knew and stayed quiet. I genuinely didn't know, but I should have asked. I should have noticed that you paid for everything and nobody ever said your name at the table. I want to pay you back, not all at once. I'm on a part-time salary, but I'll figure out a plan. You'll get every dollar, I promise." I sat at my desk and read it twice. The second time, the line about Mom's lie hit different. She hadn't just taken my money. She'd taken credit for it. She'd let my brother believe she was the one sacrificing, while I quietly wired the funds and got nothing in return, not even the truth. I wrote back, "Tyler, you don't owe me money. You owe me nothing. but I'm going to ask you for something worth more than $7,200. Don't let anyone turn you into what they turned me into. If someone asks you for money and follows it up with tears and silence when you hesitate, that's not love. That's a system, and you deserve better. He called me that night. We talked for 40 minutes, the longest conversation we'd had in years. By the end, I'd invited him to dinner the following Saturday. He became the only family member on the weekly call list, the only one who didn't need conditions because he'd already met them. He told the truth, and he showed up. June 28th, a Saturday. I spent the morning drafting an email I'd been composing in my head since March. Rosa didn't write it for me. She offered, and I said no. This had to be my voice. But she reviewed it for clarity and tone before I hit send, the same way she'd reviewed the spreadsheet. Calm, factual, unassailable. Subject line: moving forward, my boundaries. Mom, I love you. That's true, and nothing that happened changes it. But I can't continue a relationship where I am the one who gives endlessly and receives nothing back. Not money, not acknowledgement, not respect. For us to move forward, I need 3 things. 1. You acknowledge that sending an email to Jill Pemberton claiming I had agreed to share the venue was wrong. Not a miscommunication. Wrong. 2. You never again make a financial decision or sign anything on my behalf without my explicit written consent. 3. You stop comparing me to Megan, or to anyone. I am not a supporting character in someone else's story. If you're willing to meet these conditions, I'm here. We can rebuild. It won't be overnight, and it won't be the way things were before, because the way things were before nearly cost me everything. If you're not ready yet, that's okay too. I'll be here when you are, but I'll be here at a safe distance. Whitney. I read it aloud to Nathan before sending. He listened without interrupting, then said, "That's the strongest thing you've ever written." I clicked send at 11:04 a.m. The read receipt came back at 9:47 p.m., nearly 11 hours. I could picture her reading it at the kitchen table, maybe rereading it, maybe sitting with it the way I'd sat with the spreadsheet that night in March. She didn't respond. 1 day passed, then a week, then 2. And for the first time, her silence didn't crush me. It just confirmed what I already knew. The next move was hers, and I was done performing. Lorraine's response came on July 2nd. 1 final email, 5 sentences, no warmth. Whitney, you have destroyed this family. Your spectacle was selfish, your spreadsheet was manipulative, and your absence from that venue humiliated people who have loved you your entire life. I have nothing more to say. Do not contact me again. I read it once, forwarded it to Rosa for the file, and didn't reply. Some doors close themselves, and the kindest thing you can do is let them. Megan's message arrived 3 days later, on July 5th. It was longer, messier, and harder to dismiss. Whitney, I know I owe you an apology. I knew about the email Mom sent to the coordinator. I knew about the invitations before they were printed. I should have said something. I'm sorry. Then the second paragraph. But you could have just talked to us instead of disappearing. You could have told me to my face. That hurt. I sat with it for a day before responding. When I did, I kept it to 2 sentences. I spent 7 years talking to this family, Megan. It cost me $83,247 and 0 respect. Talking didn't work. She didn't write back. A week later, Derek called Nathan one more time. His voice was different, tired, but less rattled than before. Megan and I started couples therapy, he said. I think we both have a lot to figure out. I just wanted you to know. Nathan said, I respect that. Good luck, man. When he hung up, I asked if he thought Megan would actually change. He shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. That's not your variable to solve. He was right. Lorraine would never see it. Megan might someday. And I was learning something I wish I'd understood a decade earlier. Healing doesn't require everyone to apologize. It only requires you to stop waiting for them to. July 19th. A Saturday evening. Our apartment. Nathan made pasta, garlic, olive oil, cherry tomatoes, the kind of meal that takes 20 minutes and fills the room with the smell of something honest. I tossed a salad. Rosa brought a bottle of red and a corkscrew because she said she didn't trust ours. Tyler showed up with a bottle of wine too, a $12 Pinot Noir, and handed it to me with a look that was half shy, half proud. Bought it with my own paycheck, he said, not from anyone else's savings. Hannah Park, a colleague from Hargrove and Ellis who'd become one of my closest friends in the past year, arrived with brownies. Marcus, Nathan's college roommate, the same Marcus who'd witnessed the Ridgewood disaster from the parking lot, brought garlic bread and a story about finding a bewildered catering truck circling the venue that evening with nowhere to unload. 6 people around a table meant for 4. Elbows touching, plates passed hand to hand, conversations overlapping in the way that only happens when no one is performing. Nobody mentioned Mom. Nobody mentioned Lorraine or Megan or the spreadsheet or the 200 guests or the Maldives. We talked about Marcus's new job, Rosa's impossible client, Tyler's plan to take night classes in the fall, the fact that Nathan had finally killed the basil plant beyond resuscitation. 3 hours, the easiest 3 hours I'd had in years. When everyone left and Nathan and I were rinsing plates at the sink, I looked at the table. Empty glasses, crumbs, a stain from where Tyler knocked over the salad dressing, and thought, this is 6 people. Not 24, not 200. 6. And every single one of them chose to be here. Total cost of the evening, $47. The cheapest family dinner I'd ever hosted, and the first one where I didn't pay alone. 5 weeks of silence, and then, on August 2nd, my phone rang. I was at the kitchen counter chopping peppers for a stir-fry. Nathan was on the couch reviewing code. The screen said Mom, and I stared at it for 3 full rings before I answered. Her voice was small. Not the furious rasp of the 3 a.m. call, not the weaponized grief of the guilt trips. Small. The way a person sounds when they've been sitting alone with something heavy and have finally decided to set it down. Whitney, I read your email. I've read it several times. Okay, Mom. I need you to know I don't want to lose you. A pause, a breath that shook. I'm not good at this. I know. Another pause. I could hear the clock in her kitchen, the one with the rooster face that had hung above the stove since I was 9. The email I sent to the coordinator, I shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. She said the word wrong like she was swallowing a stone. I convinced myself you'd come around, that you'd see it was for the best, but I should have asked you. I know that now. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. She hadn't addressed the comparisons. She hadn't acknowledged the invitations. She'd met one of 3 conditions, partially, with visible effort. Thank you, Mom. That matters. That's a start. Does that mean we can talk again? It means the door is open, but the conditions in my email still stand, all 3, and I won't remind you again. You already have them in writing. She was quiet for a moment. Then, okay. We talked for 4 more minutes about nothing. The weather, a neighbor's new dog. Ordinary words stretched carefully over extraordinary damage. After I hung up, Nathan looked at me from the couch. How do you feel? She apologized for 1 thing out of 3. It's not enough. But it's the first time she's used the word wrong about her own behavior in my entire life. I set the knife down. I'll take the crack in the wall. I'm not knocking it down for her. By mid-August, 2 months after the Maldives, I sat down and did what I do best. I ran the numbers. Not on my family this time, on myself. Since June 14th, with no more emergency transfers, no catering bills for someone else's party, no mysterious deposits into relatives' accounts, my savings had increased by $4,800 in 8 weeks. That was more than I'd saved in any comparable stretch over the previous 7 years. The math was obscene in its clarity. The single biggest drain on my finances had never been rent, or student loans, or Portland's cost of living. It had been my family. The other metrics shifted too. Number of guilt trip phone calls received since the boundary email, 0. Number of stressful family dinners attended, 0. Number of evenings spent with people who actually wanted me at the table, 6. The pasta night, 2 weekend brunches with Rosa, a Friday movie marathon with Tyler at our apartment, and 2 date nights with Nathan where neither of us checked our phones. At work, something was changing that I could feel but couldn't name until my boss, Margaret, pulled me aside after a client presentation in early August. Whitney, I've noticed a real shift in you these past couple of months, more confident, more decisive, Whatever's going on, keep it up. 2 weeks later, the promotion came through. Senior financial analyst. Salary, $104,000. A $12,000 raise that felt like more than money. It felt like proof that when you stop pouring yourself into a hole, you start rising. Nathan and I sat down that weekend and set a new target. $60,000 for a down payment on our first house. At our current savings rate, free from the family tax, we'd hit it within 2 years. And then, on August 15th, Tyler sent a Venmo notification. $200. The memo line read, Installment 1 of 36, certification tuition. Thank you, sis. I stared at that memo line until the screen went blurry, and I didn't wipe my eyes because some tears you earn. On August 10th, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter by hand, not an email, not a text. I sat at the kitchen table with a sheet of cream stationery Nathan had bought me as a just because gift, and I picked up a pen, a real one, blue ink, the kind that forces you to slow down and mean every word. Dear Grandma, you were the first person who asked me if I was happy. I want you to know, I am. My wedding had 2 people. No ballroom, no 200 chairs, no gold foil invitations. Just a beach, a sunset, and a man who asks me every morning what I need instead of what I owe. I'm sorry you didn't get to be there, but I think you understand why it had to happen the way it did. You told me once that family is the person who asks if you're happy. You were right, and I need you to know, by that definition, you are my family. You always have been. I'm enclosing a photo. It's me and Nathan on the beach. I'd love it if you kept it somewhere you can see it. I love you. Whitney. I slid the Maldives photo, the one from the ceremony, printed on matte cardstock, into the envelope, addressed it to Maple Grove Senior Residence in Salem, and dropped it in the mail on my way to work. 3 days later, my phone rang. Grandma Eleanor. I picked up immediately. Sweetheart, she said, and her voice was warmer than sunlight. I hung your picture right next to my bed. You're beautiful. Nathan's a good-looking man. And the ocean? My goodness, it looks like a painting. It felt like one, Grandma. I believe that. A soft pause. You chose right, Whitney. Don't let anybody tell you different. I promised her I wouldn't. And I meant it the way you mean something you've paid $83,000 to learn. So, that's my story. I know some of you are going to call it a revenge story. I understand why. A canceled venue, an empty ballroom, a spreadsheet heard around the family group chat. It has all the ingredients. But sitting here now, 8 months removed from that beach in the Maldives, I don't think revenge is the right word. Revenge is when you want someone to suffer. What I wanted was something quieter and harder than that. I wanted to stop disappearing. I wanted the truth on the table instead of locked in a private Excel file. I wanted my wedding day to belong to me. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're the person who picks up every check and never gets thanked, the one who drops everything when the phone rings and then wonders why no one calls on your birthday, the one who has been told your whole life that setting a boundary is the same thing as being selfish, then I need you to hear this. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for saying no. And you are not alone. $83,247 and 7 years. That was my tuition. I hope your lesson costs you less, but whatever the price, it's worth it. Because on the other side of that boundary, there's a table with people who actually want you sitting there. Trust me. I'm at mine right now. Here's my question for you, and I mean it. Drop your answer in the comments. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? A. Cancel everything and fly to the Maldives the way I did. B. Confront the whole family at the venue in front of 200 people. Or C. Stay quiet and go through with it. I want to hear your answer. And if this story hit home, share it with someone who needs it today. There's another story waiting for you in the description. I think you'll feel that one too. Thank you for staying with me until the end. That means more than you know. You'll babysit your brother's kids. We're going on a family trip. That was it. No hello. No hug. No, how was your 10-hour flight, sweetheart? Just my mother, standing in the doorway with her coat already on, handing me a list of bedtimes and allergy meds, like I was the hired help she forgot to tip. My brother Derek leaned around the corner, grinning. "Don't wipe your snot on her, kids." The whole house laughed. 3 kids, 5 days, $0. And the resort they were heading to? I'd find out later. I was the one paying for it. What I said next made my mother's face drain white. And by the end of that week, every automatic payment, every bill, every favor I'd silently carried for 6 years would come crashing down on them like an avalanche they never saw building. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are. My name is Claire. I'm 27. And this is the story of how I stopped being my family's ATM and watched them realize they couldn't afford their own lives without me. Now let me take you back to 3 weeks before Christmas, the night my mother called me crying. It was 11 at night. I was sitting cross-legged on my bed in my Seattle apartment with my laptop balanced on a pillow, finishing a code review that was already 3 days overdue. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, then twice. Then it lit up with my mother's name and didn't stop. I picked up. The sobbing started before I could say hello. "Claire, honey, I need you to come home for the holidays." Her voice cracked in the exact place it always cracked. "This might be the last time I get all my kids under one roof. Your father would have wanted this." My father. She always knew exactly which wound to press. He'd been gone 8 years, and she still summoned him like a debt collector whenever she needed something from me. I told her I wasn't sure. Flights were expensive this close to Christmas. I'd just sent her the monthly transfer 5 days ago. My bank account was running on fumes and stubbornness. She didn't pause. "I already told Aunt Ruth you're coming. Don't make me look like a liar in front of the family." There it was. The 1-2. Guilt, then social pressure. I knew this choreography the way other people know their morning commute. And just like every other time, I folded. I booked a flight that night. $1,200. Economy. 10 hours with a layover in Denver. I remember staring at the confirmation email on my phone and thinking, this is fine. This is what good daughters do. I should have known better. Because the last time my mother cried on the phone like that, it cost me $11,000. But I'll get to that. 3 weeks later, I was dragging my suitcase through 6 inches of slush up my mother's driveway in Richmond, Virginia. My back ached from the flight. My fingers were numb. The porch light was on, and through the frosted glass I could see people moving around inside. I knocked. My mother opened the door, and the first thing I noticed was her coat. Not a bathrobe, not an apron, a coat. Zipped up. Keys in her hand. She didn't hug me. She didn't even look at my face. She held out a folded piece of paper. "Here's the schedule. Lily's allergic to strawberries. The baby's reflux medicine is in the cabinet above the stove. Pediatrician's number is on the fridge." She checked her watch. "We need to leave in 20 minutes to make our dinner reservation." "We?" I said. That's when Derek appeared from the hallway. Resort polo. Sunglasses pushed up on his forehead. In December. He had that grin. The one he'd worn since childhood. The one that meant he was about to say something at my expense and everyone would laugh. "Don't wipe your snot on her, kids." His 3 children came stampeding around the corner, Lily, 5, grabbing my leg, the middle one, 3, running straight past me, and the baby, 18 months old, howling in Megan's arms. Megan walked by without looking at me. "The formula's on the counter. She wakes up at 2. And then they were gone, coats on, doors slamming, the SUV pulling out of the garage. I stood in the middle of the living room holding a piece of paper with somebody else's children's bedtimes, my suitcase still zipped at my feet. That's when I noticed something. The resort brochure on the kitchen counter. 5 days. Booked 3 weeks ago, a week before my mother ever called me. The tears were a script. And I was the punchline. The baby woke up at 2 a.m. Sharp, like Megan promised. The only thing Megan got right. I lifted her from the portable crib and walked slow circles through the dark living room, patting her back, humming some half-remembered song my father used to sing. The house was quiet except for her whimpering and the hum of the refrigerator. The refrigerator. I stopped in front of it. Under the magnets and the takeout menus, there were photos. Derek's college graduation, Derek's wedding, the whole family at the beach last 4th of July. Derek, Megan, the kids, my mother, even Aunt Ruth in the corner with her sun hat. I wasn't in a single one. I stood there for a long time bouncing the baby, scanning every photo like maybe I'd missed myself. I hadn't. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. A banking notification. I shifted the baby to one arm and checked it. Charge, $4,800. Coastal Breeze Resort and Spa. My mother's credit card. The card I paid the monthly statement on. The card she'd just used to book a resort vacation that I wasn't invited to. Something cold slid through my chest. Not sadness, something sharper. I sat down on the couch with the baby asleep on my shoulder and opened my banking app. I started scrolling. Rent transfer. $1,400. Auto pay insurance. $200. Credit card statement. Variable, but never under $300. I scrolled further and further. 6 years of transactions. I'd never sat down and added them up before. I think part of me had been afraid to. The baby's breathing was slow and warm against my neck. The house was perfectly silent. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of the baby, because I opened a spreadsheet, and I started counting. To understand what happened next, you need to understand how I got here, and that means going back to the day my father died. I was 21, just graduated. No job lined up yet, just a degree and a plan to move to the West Coast and start fresh. My father, Richard Fielding, a quiet man who fixed lawnmowers in the garage and called me kiddo until the day he died, had a heart attack on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, he was gone. At the funeral, it rained so hard you could barely hear the pastor. Derek stood next to Megan, who was 6 months pregnant with Lily. He cried. My mother cried. Everyone cried. I did too, but I also remember watching my mother's face and seeing something beneath the grief. Something calculating. She pulled me aside at the reception. "Claire, you're the strong one. Derek has a family to worry about. I only have you now." I was 21. I didn't know that sentence was a leash. I got my first job 2 months later. Entry level. The paycheck barely covered my rent and groceries. The very first month, my mother called. "I can't make rent this month, baby. Just this once." I sent her $1,400, and then I sent it again the next month. And the next, and the next. For 6 years. Not once, not a single time in 72 months, did my mother ask Derek for money. Not when he bought a new truck 6 months after our father's funeral. Not when he and Megan took a cruise for their anniversary. Not when he upgraded his TV to a 70-inch flat screen. Funny how strong always meant the one who pays. Last Christmas was supposed to be different. I told myself that on the plane ride to Richmond. I even believed it. I'd bought gifts for everyone. Real gifts. A cashmere scarf for my mother. A set of wooden building blocks for the kids. Hand-painted, $60. A nice bottle of bourbon for Derek because I was still trying. Always trying. The gift I received was a bath towel, wrapped in newspaper. Not even the good kind of newspaper. It was a grocery store circular. I could still see the coupon for $2 chicken thighs peeking out from the fold. "I grabbed it last minute," my mother said cheerfully. "You're so hard to shop for." I smiled. Of course I smiled. The day after Christmas, my mother announced a family ski trip. I actually felt a little excited, which should tell you everything about how low my bar was. I woke up early, put on the warmest thing I owned, and came downstairs ready to go. Derek was tying his boots in the hallway. He looked up. "Someone's got to stay with the kids, Claire. You don't even ski." My mother appeared behind him. "He's right, honey. It makes sense." So I stayed. 3 kids, a cold house, a window with a clear view of the driveway. I watched them pile into the car, laughing, zipping jackets, passing around a thermos of hot chocolate. Megan turned and gave me a little wave through the glass, the kind you give a hotel clerk. When they came home that night, smelling like pine and cold air, not a single person asked me how my day went. Derek just looked around the living room and said, "The house is still standing. Good job." That was the first year. I told myself it wouldn't happen again. I was wrong. And the next time was worse. 8 months before the holiday trip, my mother called at midnight, not her usual guilt trip hour. This was genuine panic. Or so I thought. "Claire, the pipes burst. There's water everywhere. The kitchen floor is ruined. I don't know what to do." I could hear something dripping in the background. Maybe water. Maybe performance. I transferred $11,000 the next morning. Nearly everything in my emergency savings. I ate rice and canned beans for 3 weeks. I told myself it was worth it. My mother needed me, and I was the strong one. 2 weeks later, Derek posted photos on social media. A birthday party, his birthday, at my mother's house. And there, gleaming behind the cake and the streamlined guests, was a brand new kitchen. Granite island, pendant lights, subway tile backsplash, the works. The caption read, "Mom outdid herself this year." I stared at that photo for 10 minutes. Then I texted my mother. "I thought the pipes burst." She replied fast, like she'd been expecting the question. "They did. But since we were fixing things anyway, I upgraded the kitchen a little." Family needs a nice kitchen, Claire. A little. $11,000. I later found the actual plumbing invoice stuffed in a drawer during one of my visits. $612 to fix the pipe. The remaining $10,388 went to a kitchen remodel that I was never consulted about, never invited to enjoy, and never thanked for. Family needs a nice kitchen. She kept using that word. Family. I don't think it meant what she thought it meant, or maybe it meant exactly what she thought. Family meant me. Paying. Quietly. Forever. I deleted the text thread. I didn't say a word. That was the last time. Until it wasn't. 3 months before I flew home for the holidays, Megan sent me a screenshot by accident. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was on my lunch break, scrolling through messages, when a notification popped up from Megan, which was already unusual because Megan and I didn't talk. We existed in the same family the way strangers exist on the same subway car. The screenshot showed a group chat called Fielding Fam. I'd never seen it before. I wasn't in it. 4 members. My mother, Derek, Megan, and Aunt Ruth. My mother had written, "Claire is so dramatic sometimes. I ask for one small favor and she acts like I'm ruining her life." Derek, right below. "She just likes feeling important. Letter." Megan. LOL? Aunt Ruth. A laughing emoji. I read it 4 times. Then I put my phone face down on my desk and stared at the wall. One small favor. That's what my mother called it. $1,400 a month. $11,000 for a kitchen. Car insurance for a brother who wouldn't even hand me a cup of coffee. One small favor. And the group chat that my entire family was in. The family group chat. Didn't include me. But my monthly payment sure did include my mother's phone bill. I was paying for the phone she used to talk about me behind my back. Megan never mentioned the screenshot. Either she didn't realize she'd forwarded it, or she didn't care enough to worry. But I saved it. I took a screenshot of the screenshot and put it in a folder on my phone. I didn't know why at the time. It felt like instinct, like pocketing a receipt you might need later. Turns out, my subconscious was already building a case. Back to that first night alone in my mother's living room. The baby was asleep on the couch, tucked between 2 pillows. Lily and the middle one were in Derek's old bedroom. The house was dead quiet, and the glow from my laptop screen was the only light in the room. I'd been at it for 3 hours, transaction by transaction, month by month. Bank statements going back to August 6 years ago. The first $1,400 I ever sent. When the spreadsheet was done, I just sat there. Rent. $1,400 times 72 months. $100,800. Car insurance for Derek. $200 times 72 months. $14,400. Credit card statements. $16,800 across 6 years. That was just what I'd tracked so far. There were probably charges I'd missed. The kitchen renovation. $11,000. Total at the bottom of the screen, bolded by default because the cell formatting picked it up. $143,000. I paid $143,000 to a family that doesn't put my photo on the refrigerator. I looked at the number. Then I looked at the sleeping baby. Then I looked at the empty driveway outside. Somewhere on a beach, my family was eating shrimp cocktail on a tab that would show up on a card that I would pay. And here I sat, in a dark living room, with a spreadsheet that told me exactly how invisible I'd been, and exactly how expensive that invisibility was. I picked up my phone, typed a message to Nora, my best friend since college, the only person who ever asked me, "Claire, how much are you actually sending them? I need your help, and I need you to be honest with me." She called back in 7 minutes, and the first thing she said was something I'd needed to hear for 6 years. "Claire, you gave them a house." That was the first thing Nora said. Not hello, not what happened. She looked at the spreadsheet I'd screen shared on FaceTime, and for about 30 seconds she didn't say anything at all. I could see her eyes moving across the numbers, line by line, the way she reads everything. Like a woman who counts things for a living. Which she does. Nora's an accountant. A good one. The kind who catches errors other people pray nobody notices. I was sitting on the floor of my mother's bathroom. The door locked, the fan on so the kids wouldn't wake up. "You gave them a down payment on a house, Claire, and they didn't even give you a seat at the table." I tried to laugh. It came out wrong. She calls it helping out. Helping out is bringing groceries. Helping out is watching the kids on a Saturday. This? She pointed at the screen. This is subsidizing their entire lifestyle. Your mother's rent, your brother's car insurance, her credit card. Claire, do you even know everything that's in your name? I didn't, and that scared me more than the number. Nora walked me through it. Pull your credit report tonight, right now. Check every autopay link to your bank account. And Claire, are you a co-signer on anything? I paused. The lease. Mom asked me to co-sign when she moved after Dad died. She said it was just a formality. Nora went quiet again. That particular quiet she gets when she's angry, but choosing her words carefully. If she misses a payment, it hits your credit. You know that, right? I didn't answer, because I hadn't known that. Not really. Not the way it mattered. We're going through everything tonight, Nora said. All of it. It was 3 a.m. when I pulled my credit report. Nora stayed on the phone the whole time, guiding me through the screens while I sat on the cold tile floor with my back against the bathtub. 2 credit cards I recognized. A joint checking account I'd opened years ago and forgotten about. A co-signed lease, just like I told Nora. And then a 3rd credit card. Opened 14 months ago. Authorized user, Patricia Fielding. Balance, $3,200. I stared at the screen. Nora, I didn't open this. I know you didn't. I never signed anything. I never authorized her to be on this card. Nora's voice was careful, like someone handling glass. Claire, that's not just financial carelessness. Adding an authorized user and racking up a balance without consent. That could be considered fraud, even between family members. She's my mother. And she opened a credit line in your name without asking. Those 2 things can be true at the same time. I pulled up the statements. The charges were all hers. A department store. A day spa. $340 for a single visit. Groceries that weren't cheap. 14 months of spending on a card I didn't know existed, under my name, affecting my credit score. I set the phone down on the tile. I sat there in that bathroom, in my mother's house, with the fan still whirring above me and the faucet dripping and the baby monitor silent for once. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't cry. I just saw everything clearly, like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been stumbling through in the dark. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 years. Clarity. And clarity, it turns out, is dangerous. For the people who depend on your confusion. The next afternoon, my phone rang. Mom. I could hear waves and laughter and some kind of steel drum music in the background before she even said a word. How are the kids? Not, how are you? Not, did you sleep? Just, how are the kids? Fine, I said. Oh, good. Listen, honey, Derek forgot to pack the kids' rain boots. There's supposed to be rain tomorrow, and Lily has a thing about wet socks. Can you run to the store and grab some? With what car, Mom? A pause. Oh, right. Well, take an Uber. Use my card. Another pause. Actually, no. Just use yours. I'll pay you back. She would not pay me back. She had never, in 6 years, paid me back for anything. Derek's voice floated in from the background, bright and casual, like he was talking about the weather. Tell her to get the good brand, not the cheap ones. I looked at my laptop, still open on the kitchen counter. The spreadsheet glowed from across the room. $143,000, plus the $3,200 I'd found at 3 in the morning, plus the $4,800 resort charge. The number was still growing, even now, even while I held the phone. Sure, Mom. I hung up. I didn't go to the store. I sat at the kitchen counter and looked at the spreadsheet and the sleeping baby, and the empty house and the resort brochure and the photos on the refrigerator that didn't include me, and I made a decision. That was the last time I said, sure, Mom, and meant it. The next time those words left my mouth, they would carry a very different weight. I called Nora again that evening, after the kids were in bed. This time, I wasn't sitting on the bathroom floor. I was sitting at my mother's kitchen counter, the $11,000 kitchen counter, with my laptop open and a pen in my hand. What do you want to do? Nora asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Not the angry version, not the crying version, the clear version. I want to stop lying to myself that they'll change. Nora was quiet. Then she said, tell me what that looks like. So I told her. I laid it out like a project plan, because that's what I do for a living. I build systems, and this was a system that needed to be shut down. Step 1, cancel every automatic payment from my accounts. Rent, insurance, credit card statement, all of it. Step 2, contact the landlord and notify him that I'm removing my name as co-signer on my mother's lease. Step 3, call the credit card company and report the unauthorized card. Freeze it. Step 4, print the spreadsheet. Every line, every dollar, every month. 12 pages. Nora listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she said something that made my stomach drop, but in a good way. The way it drops when you're about to jump and you've already decided. Call the landlord before you tell them. Get it in motion before they can guilt you out of it. Once the paperwork's moving, it's done. They can cry all they want, but the clock is ticking. She was right. If I told them first, my mother would cry, Derek would yell, and I'd fold. I always folded. Not this time. I'm not punishing them, I said. I'm just not lying for them anymore. I made the calls the next morning while the kids watched cartoons in the living room. One by one, with the volume turned up just enough to cover my voice from the kitchen. First, the landlord, Mr. Garnett. A polite man with a flat voice who clearly wasn't used to calls like this. I'm calling because I'm a co-signer on the lease at 412 Briar Lane. My mother, Patricia Fielding, is the primary tenant. I'd like to formally request the removal of my name. He asked a few questions. I answered them. Then he said, I appreciate the heads up, Ms. Fielding. Your mother will have 30 days to secure a new co-signer, or the lease will transition to a month-to-month arrangement pending credit review. 30 days. The clock was set. Second call. My bank. I canceled the auto pay for 3 recurring transfers: rent, car insurance, credit card statement. The representative confirmed each cancellation and read me a reference number. I wrote them all down. Third call. The credit card company. This one took longer. I explained the situation. An authorized user had been added to my account without my knowledge or consent. The representative paused, then said, "We'll flag this for review and freeze the card immediately. You have the option to file a formal dispute if you'd like." "Not yet," I said, "but I want it frozen today." Done. I sat at the kitchen counter after I hung up. The stack of printed spreadsheets, 12 pages highlighted in yellow, sat in a manila folder beside me. Everything was ready. The autopays were dead. The landlord had been notified. The unauthorized card was ice. Everything was set. The dominoes were lined up. All I had to do was wait for them to walk back through that front door. Tanned, rested, and completely unaware that the floor beneath them had already been pulled. That last night, Lily crawled into my lap on the couch. She was in her pajamas, the ones with the little astronauts on them, and she smelled like baby shampoo and graham crackers. She pressed her face into my shoulder and said, "Auntie, why don't you come on trips with us?" "I have to work, sweetie." She pulled back and looked at me the way 5-year-olds look at you when they're about to repeat something they heard an adult say. "Daddy says you don't do anything important." The room tilted, just for a second. I hugged her tighter and didn't answer. I tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and walked back to the kitchen, where my phone was charging next to the manila folder. And then, for the first time since this whole thing started, I almost quit. I picked up the phone and called Nora. It was past midnight in Seattle, but she answered on the second ring. I was crying. Really crying. The ugly kind. The kind I hadn't let myself do in years. "What if I'm wrong?" I whispered. "What if this destroys everything?" Nora didn't hesitate. "Claire, you paid $143,000. They called you dramatic in a group chat you weren't in. Your mother opened a credit card in your name. This isn't love. This is a system. And you're the engine they refuse to maintain." I pressed the heel of my hand against my eyes, breathed. "I'm not doing this to hurt them," I said. "I know. You're doing this so you can stop hurting." I hung up, wiped my face, looked at Lily's door, closed and quiet. Then I heard it, the next morning. Tires on gravel, their car pulling into the driveway. And I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. They poured through the front door like a parade float nobody asked for. Suitcases rolling, skin tanned, voices loud. My mother was wearing new sunglasses. Derek had a resort gift shop bag dangling from one hand. Nobody said thank you. Nobody asked me how the 5 days went. Patricia walked past me, scanned the kitchen. "The house looks clean." Then, to no one in particular, "Did anyone bring the leftovers from the resort?" Megan scooped up the baby and inspected her like a mechanic checking under a hood. "Did she eat enough? She looks thinner." "She ate everything on the schedule you left," I said. Megan didn't respond, just walked off toward the nursery. Derek tossed his keys onto the counter. "House is still standing. Not bad, sis." Same line as last year. Same grin. Then my mother turned to me with the casual authority of someone giving a hotel concierge one last task. "Oh, Claire, before I forget, can you run to pick up Derek's dry cleaning? He has a thing tonight." I looked at her. Really looked. "No." The word sat in the room like a rock through a window. My mother blinked. Derek stopped mid-step. "What?" Patricia said. I said no, but I do need to talk to everyone. Tonight. After dinner. 3 seconds of silence. 3 full seconds. I counted them in my head. "About what?" Derek asked. "About money." My mother's face flickered, something fast behind the eyes, gone before it fully formed. Then she smiled. That tight smile. The one she uses when she's already rewriting the narrative. "Someone's dramatic again. Fine. We'll talk after dinner." She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Dinner was my mother's specialty. Pot roast with mashed potatoes, green beans, a pie from the bakery she always swore she made herself. She cooked it in the new kitchen. My kitchen. The $11,000 one. The conversation was all resort. Patricia told a story about a waiter who spilled a drink near their table. Derek showed photos on his phone. The pool, the sunset, a plate of crab legs. Megan scrolled through her own album and held the screen toward me. Look at this one. The kids would have loved it. The kids who were here, with me, while you were there. I said nothing. I ate my food. I waited. My mother noticed. She always noticed when the room wasn't organized the way she wanted it. Honey, you seem tense. Is everything okay at work? There it was. The redirect. If Claire is upset, it must be about Claire. It could never, ever be about them. Work is fine, Mom. I just have some numbers I want to share with everyone after we clean up. Derek snorted. Numbers? What is this? A board meeting? Patricia laughed. Megan half smiled. Something like that, I said. I didn't smile. I set my fork down. The clink of metal on ceramic was the loudest thing in the room for about 2 seconds, and in those 2 seconds, something shifted. I watched it cross their faces. Derek's grin fading half a degree. My mother's hands pausing over her plate. Megan glancing at Derek the way people glance at each other when the script goes off book. I waited until the dishes were done. Until the kids were in bed. Until there was nowhere to run and nothing to distract them. Then I opened my laptop. My mother is not a stupid woman. Manipulative, yes. Entitled, absolutely. But stupid? No. While I was putting the kids to bed, she made a phone call. I know because I heard her whispering in the hallway when I came back downstairs. She had her hand cupped over her mouth, like she was shielding a candle flame. Ruth, can you come over? Claire is acting strange. I think she's going to cause a scene. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Aunt Ruth, my father's younger sister, 52, the kind of woman who brings casseroles to every crisis and opinions to every conversation, stood on the porch in her reading glasses and a heavy cardigan. She hugged my mother first. Then she turned to me with that particular look. Half pity, half suspicion. The one she used whenever my mother had gotten to her first. Claire, your mother told me you're upset about something. Whatever it is, let's just talk it out like family. My mother appeared behind Ruth's shoulder, dabbing her eye with a tissue. See? Even Aunt Ruth is worried about you, honey. She called reinforcements. Of course she did. She'd been doing this my entire life, stacking the room before I could speak, making sure the jury was seated before the defendant even entered. Derek was on the couch with his arms crossed. Megan sat beside him, scrolling her phone, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. And now Aunt Ruth, freshly primed with my mother's version of events, was settling into the armchair like a judge taking the bench. 4 against 1. Just the way my mother liked it. I looked at Ruth and smiled. Not a mean smile, a tired one. That's exactly what I plan to do, Aunt Ruth, talk it out, like family. Then I opened my laptop. The living room was arranged like a courtroom nobody had planned. My mother sat in the center of the couch, hands folded in her lap, the posture she used when she wanted to look reasonable. Derek was to her left, arms still crossed, jaw tight. Megan was on the right, phone finally face down on the armrest. Aunt Ruth sat in the wing-back chair across from them, watching me over her reading glasses. I stood, laptop open on the coffee table, the manila folder beside it. Okay, Claire, my mother said. Her voice had that particular texture, smooth on top, impatient underneath. What's this big emergency? Can we speed this up? Derek said. I've got an early morning. I didn't look at Derek. I looked at the screen. Then I looked at each of them, one at a time, the way my father used to look at me when he was about to say something that mattered. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be factual. And when I'm done, I'm going to leave. You can react however you want, but you will not change my mind. 5 seconds of silence. My mother looked at Derek. Derek looked at Megan. Megan picked up her phone, then set it down again. Aunt Ruth leaned forward, 1 inch. Nobody spoke. The wall clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed from the kitchen. The new refrigerator, in the new kitchen, paid for by the person standing in front of them. I turned the laptop so the screen faced the couch. I pressed one key. The spreadsheet filled the screen. Every line, every month, every dollar, organized by category. sorted by date, totaled at the bottom. The number at the bottom, bold, red, underlined, was $146,200. I read it line by line. I didn't rush. I didn't whisper. I spoke the way I speak in a code review. Factual, sequential, documented. Rent, $1,400 a month. 72 months. That's $100,800. My mother's mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Car insurance for Derek. $200 a month. 72 months. $14,400. Derek shifted on the couch. Credit card statements for the card linked to your account, Mom. Over 6 years. $16,800. I kept going. Kitchen renovation. The one you told me was a pipe emergency. $11,000. The plumber's invoice was $612. The rest went to granite countertops and pendant lights. My mother looked down at her hands. And this resort you just came back from. $4,800. Charged to the card I pay the statement on. The card you didn't tell me you were using for a vacation I wasn't invited to. I straightened up. Plus incidentals I'm still finding. Total. $146,200. Silence. 8 seconds of it. I know because the clock on the wall ticked and I counted. Derek was the first to speak. Where are you getting these numbers? Your bank statements. Or rather, my bank statements. Because every single one of these came out of my accounts. I opened the manila folder and placed the printed pages on the coffee table, one at a time. 12 pages. Each one highlighted in yellow. They landed with the softest sound. Paper on wood. But in that room, in that silence, each one sounded like a door closing. $146,200. That's what helping out looks like when you add it up. But that's not all. I watched my mother's eyes flick up from the printed pages. Something new behind them. Not guilt. Fear. 14 months ago, someone opened a credit card in my name. I was listed as the primary account holder. An authorized user was added. Patricia Fielding. I looked at my mother. I didn't sign anything. I didn't agree to it. The balance on that card is $3,200. Patricia's hand went to her throat. That was just for emergencies, Claire. I pulled the statements, Mom. Nordstrom, $218. A spa day, $340. Groceries. But not budget groceries. Organic steaks? Imported cheese? I paused. That's not an emergency. That's a lifestyle. On my credit. Aunt Ruth turned to my mother. Her face had changed. The pity was gone. Patty, is this true? You opened a card in her name? It's not what it looks like. And one more thing. I picked up my phone, opened the folder, and held the screen so everyone could see it. The screenshot. The group chat. Fielding fam. 4 members. Not 5. I read it out loud, my voice flat and steady. Claire is so dramatic sometimes. I ask for one small favor and she acts like I'm ruining her life. That was you, Mom. I scrolled. She just likes feeling important. Let her. I looked at Derek. That was you. Derek's face went red from the neck up, like paint being poured. Megan stared at the floor as if the carpet held a trapdoor she could disappear through. Aunt Ruth pulled her glasses off. Slowly. Like a woman realizing she'd been reading the wrong page of a very long book. Patty, she said quietly, you opened a card in her name? My mother started crying. Not the soft kind, the loud kind, the performance kind. The version that had always worked before, the one that made everyone in the room rush to her side and forget what they were upset about. I can't believe my own daughter is doing this to me, she said, her voice cracking in all the rehearsed places. After everything I sacrificed raising you kids alone. Your father would be devastated. There it was. The dead card. She played it the way she always played it. Like an ace she kept up her sleeve for emergencies. Derek stood up. You're seriously doing this during the holidays? What is wrong with you? You want a medal for helping your own family? Megan murmured from the couch. This is so uncomfortable. And then went silent. Still the bystander. still watching from behind the glass. My mother turned to Aunt Ruth, her eyes wet, her chin trembling. "Ruth, tell her. Tell her she's being ungrateful." But Ruth didn't tell me anything. She was looking at the spreadsheet, tracing the highlighted lines with one finger. Her lips were moving, doing math. Then she looked up. Not at me. At Patricia. "Patty," she said. Her voice was careful but solid, the voice of a woman who'd just done the arithmetic and didn't like the total. $146,000 is not helping out. And the credit card. "Not you too," my mother whispered. The tears were still streaming, but something behind them had shifted. She wasn't sad. She was losing. I stood completely still. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I let the numbers sit on the table and the words hang in the air, and I let the truth do what the truth does when you stop apologizing for it. My mother was crying. My brother was yelling, but I hadn't even told them the worst part yet. I raised one hand, just slightly, palm open. The room went quiet, not because they respected me, but because something in my posture had changed and they could feel it. "I'm not asking for anything back," I said. "I'm not suing anyone. I'm not here to punish you. I'm just telling you what's already happened." Derek sat back down, slowly. "As of yesterday, every automatic payment from my accounts to yours has been canceled. Rent? Canceled. Car insurance? Canceled. Credit card statement? Canceled. All of it. Effective immediately." My mother's face went white. Not pink. Not pale. White. "I've notified your landlord, Mr. Garnett, that I'm removing my name as cosigner on the lease. You have 30 days to find a new cosigner, or the lease transitions to a month-to-month arrangement pending a credit review." Derek leaned forward. "You can't do that." "I already did, Derek. 2 days ago. And the credit card that was opened in my name without my consent," I said, looking at my mother. "Frozen. The balance is under review." And then the room stopped. I don't mean it got quiet. I mean it stopped. The way a clock stops. The way a heart skips. The way a movie freeze frames on the one shot that changes everything. 10 seconds. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Aunt Ruth's hand went to her chest. Megan's phone slipped from the armrest and hit the carpet. Derek stared at Megan. Megan stared at the floor. And my mother, who had spent my entire adult life writing the story of this family in her own hand, whispered 3 words. "No. No. No way." I didn't blink. "I'm not punishing you. I'm just not paying for you anymore." Derek pulled his phone from his pocket like a man reaching for a life raft. He opened his insurance app, tapped twice. His face changed. "My insurance says lapsed." He looked up at me. "What did you do?" "I stopped paying for it. That's what I did. Your car insurance has been in my name, billed to my card, for 6 years. I canceled the auto pay." Megan grabbed his arm. "Derek, the pediatrician is on Tuesday. We can't drive the kids without insurance. We can't—" "Shut up, Megan." Derek turned back to me, his voice low and tight. "Turn it back on, Claire." "No, Derek. Turn it back on. No, you turn it on. In your name. With your money. The way every other 31-year-old man with 3 children and a truck handles his own car insurance." He stood up. For a moment I thought he might yell. Really yell, not the performative kind. But he didn't. He just stood there, his phone in one hand, his mouth opening and closing like a man trying to start a sentence that doesn't exist. "This is insane," he finally said. "You're insane. I'm 27 years old. I've been paying your car insurance since you were 25. That's $200 a month for 6 years. $14,400. And you never once asked where it came from." That was the line that landed. Not the number. The never once. I watched it hit him. His jaw clenched. His eyes dropped. And for the first time in my life, I saw my brother look at me and have absolutely nothing to say. Megan was already on her phone, Googling something. Probably insurance quotes. The first domino had fallen, but the biggest one was still standing. My mother's voice came out thin, stretched, like a wire about to snap. Claire, if you take your name off the lease, I can't qualify on my own. My credit. It's not. She stopped, swallowed. I'll lose the house. I looked at her, at the woman who had fed me guilt for 6 years, who had called me crying to get me on a plane, who had handed me a babysitting schedule before she'd handed me a glass of water. It was never your house, Mom. It was mine. I just let you live in it. She turned to Ruth. Ruth, please, talk to her. She's going to put me on the street. Aunt Ruth was sitting very still. She'd been quiet since the spreadsheet, since the credit card reveal, since the group chat. But now she spoke, and her voice had a tremor I'd never heard before. Patty, I had no idea she was paying for all of this. You told me you were managing on your own. You told me Claire was just helping with groceries here and there. I was managing $146,000, Patty. That is not managing. That is not groceries. Ruth paused. Her chin lifted. Her eyes were wet, but they were steady. If my brother were alive? She stopped. The room waited. My brother would be ashamed of how you've treated his daughter. My mother broke. Not the theatrical break, the real one. The sound that came out of her was small and raw, and it filled the room the way water fills a crack. She pressed both hands to her face and wept. Nobody moved toward her. For the first time in my memory, nobody rushed to comfort Patricia Fielding. I'm not putting you on the street, Mom. I'm giving you 30 days to figure out your own life. The way I've been figuring out mine. Alone. For 6 years. I closed the laptop. I picked up the manila folder. I stood up straight. The way I should have stood up years ago. I love this family, I said. I do. But love is not a subscription you auto-renew on someone else's credit card. My mother was still crying. Derek was standing against the wall, his arms at his sides now, staring at nothing. Megan had her face in her hands. If any of you want a relationship with me, a real one, where I'm not the ATM or the babysitter or the scapegoat, you know my number. But the next time you call, it won't be to ask for money. I paused. It will be to ask how I'm doing. I reached for my suitcase. I'd packed it that afternoon while they were unpacking theirs. I'd placed it by the door the way someone places a chess piece, quietly, deliberately, before the final move. I was halfway to the front door when I heard the footsteps. Small ones. Fast. Auntie, where are you going? Lily. Astronaut pajamas, eyes wide, standing in the hallway, barefoot on the cold hardwood. I set down my suitcase. I knelt in front of her. I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and said, I'm going home, sweetie, but I'll always pick up the phone when you call. Always. I kissed her forehead. She held on to my sleeve for a second, then let go. I stood up. I looked at my mother one last time. She was sitting on the couch, hands in her lap, staring at the stack of printed pages. She didn't say a word. For the first time in my entire life, Patricia Fielding had nothing to say. I opened the door. The cold air hit my face. Snow was falling, soft and quiet. I walked to the curb and called a car to the airport. I didn't look back. The plane took off at 11:42 p.m. window seat, red-eye to Seattle with a connection in Charlotte. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and watched the lights of Richmond shrink into a grid, then a glow, then nothing. The cabin was dim. The engines hummed. The woman next to me was already asleep. My phone buzzed. 14 messages. Mom, how could you do this to me? Derek, you ruined Christmas. Megan, the baby needs formula. Can you at least send money for that? Aunt Ruth, Claire, I'm sorry. I should have seen it sooner. Call me when you're ready. I read each one exactly once. Then I muted every thread except Ruth's. There was one more. From Nora. Landing okay? I typed back. Not yet, but I think I will be. I put my phone in airplane mode and sat there in the dark for a long time. The captain made an announcement about weather in Charlotte. A flight attendant walked the aisle with a quiet cart. I ordered a ginger ale. $5. $5. For myself. Without checking my bank account first, without calculating whether I could afford it after the rent transfer, the insurance payment, the credit card statement. I took a sip and realized this was the first thing I'd bought for myself in 6 years without doing math in my head about someone else's bills. It was just ginger ale, but it tasted like the beginning of something. The messages kept coming in. I knew they would. My mother's voice would fill my voicemail by morning, cycling through the stages. Anger, guilt, bargaining, more guilt. Derek would go silent. Megan would ask for money one more time because that was the only language she had. But at 35,000 feet, none of it could reach me. 1 week later, Seattle. Rain. I was back at my desk, back in my routine, back in the apartment that suddenly felt different. Not because anything in it had changed, but because everything outside it had. Aunt Ruth called me on Wednesday with updates. She didn't gossip. She reported, the same calm, factual tone I'd used in that living room. My mother had received a formal letter from Mr. Garnett. 30 days to find a new cosigner or the lease converts to month with a higher rent pending credit review. Patricia had been calling every relative she could think of, asking someone, anyone, to co-sign. Nobody would. Word had spread. The number had spread. $146,000 has a way of ending arguments before they start. Derek went 3 days without car insurance. He took Ubers to get the kids to the pediatrician. When he finally bought his own policy, the premium was higher than what I'd been paying. He had no independent history, no clean record in his own name. He was 31 years old and buying car insurance for the first time. Megan called her own mother and asked to stay with her for a week. Stress, she said. The unauthorized credit card was frozen. The $3,200 balance was under dispute. My mother would have to answer for every charge. No more spa days. No more department store runs. Not on my name. Not anymore. And me? I checked my bank account on Friday, the way I always did. But the number at the bottom was different. For the first time in 6 years, I had $3,800 left at the end of the month. Not $200, not $47, $3,800. That's what my life costs when I stop paying for theirs. 2 weeks later, a Sunday afternoon. My phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't answer. I stared at the screen for 4 rings, watching her name glow against the gray Seattle rain outside my window. On the 5th ring, I picked up. Her voice was different. Softer. The kind of soft she uses when she's building towards something. Claire, honey, I've been thinking, and maybe I wasn't always fair to you. I waited. I'd learned to wait. I'm sorry if you felt hurt. If. That little word. 2 letters that turn an apology into an accusation. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry I had the audacity to feel something about it. But you have to understand, she continued. After your father died, I had no one. You were all I had. Mom, I said. I wasn't all you had. You had Derek. You had Aunt Ruth. You had a job. You chose me. Not because I was the only option, but because I was the only one who wouldn't say no. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. Then quieter. So, does this mean you'll help with the lease? Just until I get back on my feet? There it was. Buried in the apology like a hook inside a worm. The whole call, the softened voice, the maybe I wasn't fair. All of it leading to one thing. No, Mom. That's exactly what this means I won't do anymore. Silence. Then her voice dropped. Cold. Hard. Stripped of every pretense. You'll regret this. The line went dead. I set the phone down. Looked at the rain. I didn't cry. I didn't call Nora. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt done. 2 months later, a Saturday morning in Seattle, I woke up at 8. Not to an alarm. Not to a phone call. not to a text that said, "Can you send?" or "I need," or "just this once." I woke up because the light came through my curtains and my body decided it was time. I made coffee. French press. Good beans. The $12 bag I'd been eyeing for weeks, and finally bought because I could. I sat at my kitchen table and did something I hadn't done on a Saturday morning in 6 years. Nothing. No bank transfers. No guilt. No mental arithmetic about whose bills were due and whether I'd have enough left for groceries. My phone buzzed. FaceTime. Aunt Ruth. I answered. She was in her living room, reading glasses on, a mug of something in her hand. She looked tired but clear. "I talked to your mother," she said. "I told her she needs help. Financial counseling at the very least. She's not happy with me either right now." "I'm sorry, Aunt Ruth." "Don't be. I should have paid closer attention. I believed her when she said she was managing." Ruth paused. Then she said something I hadn't known I needed to hear. "Claire, your dad would be proud of you. Not because you stopped giving, but because you finally valued yourself." I pressed my hand over my mouth. The tears came. But they were different this time. Not the burning kind. The kind that come when something heavy finally lifts. Nora was at the table across from me, mid-bite of a piece of toast. She'd come over for brunch, the way she did most Saturdays now. She caught my eye and grinned. "Welcome to your life, Fielding. It's been waiting for you." I used to think being a good daughter meant saying yes to everything, that every no was a betrayal. That love came with a monthly payment, and if I stopped sending it, I'd stop mattering. I was wrong. My mother and I don't talk much now. She sends texts sometimes, short ones, usually about the weather or a recipe she saw on television. She hasn't asked for money. I don't know if that's growth or strategy. I hope it's growth, but I've stopped needing to know. Derek hasn't called. Not once. I think about Lily sometimes. Her astronaut pajamas. The way she held my sleeve. I send her birthday cards with bookstore gift cards inside. I don't know if she gets them. Megan sent me one text about a month after I left. "The baby needs formula. Can you at least help with that?" I replied with the phone number for WIC assistance and a link to apply. She never wrote back. Aunt Ruth calls every Sunday. Without fail. We talk about my dad. About work. About her garden. She's the only bridge I have back to my family, and I've decided that one good bridge is enough. I'm not rich. I'm not winning. I still live in a one-bedroom apartment. Some weeks I eat ramen. I still check my bank account too often. Old habits don't die. They just learn to whisper. But for the first time in 6 years, my money is mine. My time is mine. My peace is mine. And if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're someone's ATM, someone's free babysitter, someone's plan B, I want you to know something. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to count. And you're allowed to leave. That's not selfishness. That's survival. Love is not a subscription. And you are not a service they forgot to cancel. Thank you for staying with me to the end. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the invisible one, the one who pays, the one who stays, leave a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. Hit that like button if you felt something. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's still paying for people who won't even put their photo on the fridge, send it to them. Sometimes the courage to set a boundary starts with knowing you're not alone. There's another story in the description that I think you'll connect with. I'll see you there.